Hi guys, and welcome to another episode of the Burn Desire Show. And today I've got Juandre Kruger. I hope I pronounced that correctly this time.
Yes, great, Charles. And awesome show to be on.
So this is the first time that this happened where I interviewed your father, Dr. Kruger, the ophthalmologist, a couple of weeks ago, and then now the father and son with yourself.
Yes, great. And it's a privilege where possible to share stories, and hopefully there's a ripple effect that can bring some words of encouragement and life-changing aspects to people in this world.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, we were just saying, because you can see in the background, those that are watching, that you've got a load of rugby memorabilia from games you've played and the jerseys and all sorts of things, which we'll definitely come into. I always like to, as I mentioned before, and people probably get bored of this quote that I use, but it's Steve Jobs, and I just love it. And it's that you can't connect dots going forwards, only backwards. So if we go right to kind of your younger years, presumably were you a super sporty kid doing all different sports? Like how sort of kid were you growing up?
You guessed that right. So I did basically every ball sport which I could, touch, put my hands on. I took part in that. I love taking part in team sports, and at the age around 5, 6 years old, I started playing rugby. I grew up in Cape Town, South Africa, which is a wonderful place, which we've seen been voted one of the best cities in the world. And my rugby career started around that age, but I did all different sports. And some kids sometimes they specialize at a early age at a specific sport. Nothing right, nothing wrong. Everyone's different. And I took part in all different sports still quite late in my high school career, and then where I basically started getting the opportunity go play professional rugby, and at the same time, to some extent, I always had in the back of my mind that you don't know what's going to happen. You're as good as the last game, and I always studied also because I had a passion for business and sports both, and connecting those dots from a young age. I grew up, my folks are separated, so it doesn't mean that when your folks are separated that that you can't make a success of your life. I've always had a great relationship with my parents, my brothers, my sisters, my family, because your support systems is very important. And sometimes you all I can say is that sometimes you have challenges in life, and it's how you decide to deal with those challenges. And sport was a platform for me to some extent to get a little bit about the world and things that's going on, and enjoy it with my friends on the sporting field, and it paid off. I was fortunate.
When you were growing up and you were, doing all the different sports, why was it specifically rugby that you went down that road? And were you without, I mean, it's pretty obvious you're a professional rugby player. Were you noticeably, even for your own self, like much better than the other people? Did you work harder? Was it a combination of those things?
Those professional sports I learned quite late in my life, and we can get a little bit deep into it later about your mindset and all these aspects. So I've been fortunate to play with some of the world's best rugby players, trophies and different leagues, etc. But sometimes people cross your path and they're actually better than you. And some players do get injuries. Some guys just don't take the opportunity on, or whatever their decision, they don't enjoy it or whatever. But I got some people do know Donnie Craven, so I got the Donnie Craven bursary. I was fortunate in some extent with that, but basically study and be in the environment of rugby. South Africa is so big since 1995 regarding rugby. So if you in the right university or schooling system. So I went to a school called Paul Roos Gymnasium that's got the most Springboks, 1906, one of the first Springbok captains, Paul Roos. And being in that environment shapes you to some extent, and it opens a little bit of doors for you. So going through that, to some extent, I got the opportunity through that, and I graduated with both hands. And there's that quote about the pain of discipline, or the regret. So being in an environment where you can be disciplined, or the pain of regret of not taking on the opportunity. I trained hard. I was at the right time at the right place. Obviously, I had injuries. I've had plenty of injuries. I had plenty of challenges and obstacles, but I remained disciplined to try and achieve rugby at the highest level, and it paid off.
And so you went to the college, and then what's the next step? You got the bursary. I think we'll come on to it a little later, but I think it is interesting. I noted as well. I know your father mentioned this when I was talking about you with him, that you got an education and a solid education even throughout your later part of your rugby professional career, which I think is interesting because I think not so many professional sports will necessarily do that, and maybe that's why they have issues later on down the road after the career's over.
I would encourage sports players because a sports player, if he plays at the highest level, he will obviously do well financially. And now we'll have an agent, he'll have a accounting officer or accountant, advisors and managers and people around him. But if you have a little bit of common sense regarding finances or business, then you can actually, because you're in a privileged situation, are you earning financial, above market financial income? Now you can at least invest it or utilize it or allocate it to the best possible ways you or your benefits or your goals. So by studying, I studied BCom management accounting. It's quite lucky to see my chartered management accounting, which focuses on cost accounting, was one of the first things I studied, and that helped me to make good decisions financially also while playing. But by having a bit of a financial background and studies completed, I continue out of the 17 years I played professional rugby. I studied about 10 years. I went on studying like a CFA level one, which is investment and portfolio management. Then I was fascinated when I went to go play in France. I studied French. And then I went to go do a MSc, Master of Science in Business, like MBA in France, but in French, which was quite tough. So
That's
that
crazy.
helped me while I was playing just to some extent calm down my mind also because some people, yes, only one thing. But you don't know what happens and how sport deals with you. So if you get an injury and you're done, what do you for? So I'm a type of my personality is, what is plan A? What is plan B, C? What if this happens? Then, this is the other options and circumstances and things like that. So I believe that by studying and completing that, and my family supporting me and encouraging me to do that, that also helped me to succeed in sports. So there's these small different dots on people, what they say through the journey, growing up and achieving whatever your goals are. By those dots coming together, it actually helps you to your end journey or purpose.
For sure, and that's interesting. And just talk through your career and how, again, you end up. I know you've ended up playing. You talked a bit about it there, playing in France. You played in England. How did it all come together? What was the first kind of place you played, and how did that come to be?
Growing up in South Africa, so I was born in 85. So I grew up also to some extent through the apartheid times, 94, 95. What happened in South Africa, and also rugby, winning the 95 Rugby World Cup. Before that time, also South Africa not being allowed to take part because of apartheid. And then going to Paul Roos is one of the top rugby schools in the world, well-balanced school. So the journey through that, growing up and experiencing, seeing life, etc., it was challenging as well because of the politics involved in South Africa, and the challenges that also because a lot of these kids, it was not that grew up. I'm now at the age of 40. That the people around my age and a little bit before and after this, especially to some extent, I wouldn't say, yes, families and people were affected in all different ways. Is that the I face challenges based on team selections and politics and things like that. Which do you give up or do you take on the challenge? And I took on the challenge. I said I'm not going to give up, no matter what. I didn't play. I couldn't make provincial under 18. I had to go play provincial under 20, which was quite, I know you're playing you at the age of 18, are you playing with guys that's, 20, 21 years old, 2, 3 years older than you, that makes a difference. Then I had the opportunity to go study. So at the same time. And then I moved on to the Bulls, which is in Pretoria, an incredible rugby union that delivered many Springboks. I had the opportunity to go learn there from some of the other top players in the world. And so from the Bulls, and it was a big thing for me leaving Western Province and Cape Town, because Cape Town was my home where I lived for 20, at that stage, probably 20, 23 years. I lived here, I studied here. It's my home. I was, passionate about it. It was like the best place in the world for me. And even though late in my career, my high school, my mother immigrated overseas, and some of my siblings, I still believed, like, Cape Town is my home. And then I went on, played at the Bulls. Then the opportunity came up to go play in England. And I thought that's actually another great opportunity. Players like Carlos Spencer, fortunately, some of the players passed away, that played there as well. One of the top blocks of Australia. So I could get great exposure into the England rugby system. And in those years, you could still live in a country for 3 years and then qualify. But now I got myself into a difficult situation. I studied. I played for a great club in South Africa, and now I'm playing for a great club, Northampton Saints in the UK. And now I must make a decision: do I come back to South Africa, or do I stay in England and try and play for England? And now I'm talking about small things. It's you do in life, which you do not know the impact and the effect that has on people's lives. Maybe 5 years, 10 years later, you maybe arrive at the airport, wherever you greet someone kind with their parents. They had a bad day. You were so kind. They still remember till today. You walk, past them in the streets. They still say that, geez, that day you were so kind with me and my parents. I appreciate it. So I'm talking about small acts of kindness. So early days, my mom gave me a book, actually a Bible. She put a small emblem or something in my Bible in the book. And when I was in the UK playing rugby, and I had to seek answers, what is my decision? I had great opportunities, but I had to make the right decision. And I opened that book, which I didn't open too often as I should. And I looked at that, and I never actually realized what my mom did. She put a Springbok emblem, which when you play for the Springboks, they always put it on your blazer. And it was a small gold emblem in the front of the Bible book. And I saw that, and I got peace over my mind, and said, it's going to be tough. I played in the UK, played over 54 caps for Northampton Saints. We did great as a team there. We won the European Challenge Cup as well. We were in playoffs. And I felt that, that peace over me on making a decision. Move back to South Africa, give yourself a chance to play for the Springboks. And when I came back to South Africa, it was quite tough, because now we had three international locks playing for the Springboks: Bakkies Botha, Victor Matfield, Daniel, so world champion players. And now I'm back at this union with these guys competing. And it was quite tough, because those guys, obviously, for how competitive they were, they wouldn't, they would play every single game to some extent. But I met a guy with a name called John McGrath, a Irish guy. He's helped many guys to the Olympics, a body and mind coach. And he helped me to understand my subconscious mind. And I was probably in my mid 20s, 25, 26, 2011, which I never actually understood, because I always trained hard. And this is a very special thing to share with people in business, sports, tough circumstances, challenges, whatever obstacles. That helped me to understand the difference between the conscious mind and the subconscious mind. And in an easy picture is the tip of the iceberg,
Yep.
and that big, whatever, smashed the Titanic to some extent at the bottom. And our conscious mindset, yeah, our conscious mind, what we smell, our senses, what we see, and what we hear, that's the 5%. The 95% is what goes on here. And for the first time, quite late in my sporting career, I understood the power of the subconscious mind, because everyone was training hard and everyone had skills. And some guys were, a little bit more blessed than other guys. They were bigger or faster or this or that. But it's that X factor and your subconscious mind. Because when you start coming into pressure circumstances, and if you use, for example, tennis, someone's hitting a ball at you at, 150 to 200 kilometers per hour, you do not have a chance to think. You react. If you're in a rugby game or soccer game or whatever, you're talking about split seconds, and that's how you then reacting. And yes, you train hard, and it does those aspects help. But by training and visualizing your subconscious mind and getting yourself into, and this is to some extent meditation, getting yourself into those scenarios where you're under pressure, you're playing in a big final, you need to do line out calls or kicking to post or whatever, you can train it in your mind unlimited without fatiguing yourself physically, because you can also only train so hard. And by doing that, that was one of the most important tools and aspects for me. And there's no limit to age on that. If you're a child at the age of 5 or 6, you can dream. It's like dreaming. But yes, part of that, you need to say, this is my goals. This is how I'm going to achieve my goals, and this is what I have to do to achieve my goals. And then you need to visualize it, and by visualizing those aspects and doing what you need to realize that. And an easy way also to think about it, you're sitting on the couch, you're watching a scary movie, you know it's a bunch of nonsense, and you still get a fright. It's because the mind cannot tell the difference between an imaginary experience and a real life experience. And that's the easy way of thinking about it.
Hmm. That is interesting.
Mm.
So you decide to come back from the UK, Northampton Saints, to South Africa. You returned to the Blue Balls, right?
Yes. So technically Super Rugby, they've got leagues like Currie Cup, URC started quite later, Super Rugby and stuff. So by being a Cape Townian in Cape Town and the Stormers and Western Province, I ended up going playing for the Bulls 91 games. I would have loved to play 100 games, but life gave me that certain cards. I played the cards they gave me, and I ended up with 91 caps. I would have loved to play more, but I had a great journey at the Bulls, and I became a Springbok through that, and I'll always be feel indebted to the Bulls and what I learned and the culture and the appreciation.
Explain to me the moment that you discover that you're gonna be picked for the Springboks.
So that time also, it was 2012, and some of the elderly experienced Springboks came to retirement as well, and we had a coach called Heine Kamaya, who was at Leicester as well before. He was a great Bulls coach. He had a lot of success, and then he picked a team which was well balanced between a little bit older players and younger players, and he gave a couple of younger players the opportunity, and that was a very special moment for me becoming a Springbok, because it's something I dreamt of since I was small. Remembering '95 World Cup when Francois Pienaar and Nelson Mandela lifted the Rugby World Cup trophy. It was like every single boy in this country's dream to some extent, wanting to play for the Springboks. And if you think about how many people in this country, 60 million people over years, it's grown, probably had 150, 200 million people in South Africa since, the start to some extent, that there's only probably around 1,200, maybe it's under 1,500 Springboks in this country. I was number 832 is my Springbok number.
Amazing.
And so if you go look at the millions of people in this country, to be one of those people, the chance of playing for the Springboks 0.00001% is your chances. And being picked for the Springboks, running out, singing the anthem, and experiencing that crowd, beating England in South Africa with great teammates, making a difference, putting smiles on people's faces, and helping to contribute to South Africa and sport, uniting nations, was a massive privilege.
And do you just get a phone call one day? Did you have an inkling it was going to happen? Like, is it a bit of a shock? Like, what happens?
So going back to that thing, I put a lot of goals in place and said this. I came back. It was tough to come back. I made a big call to come back. I put a lot of goals out there, how and what I want to achieve it. So we were playing good rugby as a Blue Bulls team, and I was stats don't lie. So if you look at statistics and you're competing and statistics is out there because professional sports, if you can't measure, you can't prove it. You can see a guy does this or that, or teams are competing, they're winning games away from home. Obviously the national coach, you will see all the statistics of the different players who's doing well or not. And then he must make a decision, is that player going to fit into my culture and my game plan? And that's the big thing because there's many great players out there. And to pick the right player and the right combinations, that's the big thing. Because I've played in teams where we've had the best players in the world, and the team's just not finding that synergy. And that's the biggest thing is in in these teams, and the biggest challenge for the coaches because the coaches here is picking the different combination from locks or halfbacks or props or hookers and lineouts. So all these different aspects need to come together. And sometimes it doesn't come together because these guys don't find synergy. So that 1+1's not 2, but then 1+1 is actually 10. If you think about synergy. So I was obviously having the gut feeling to some extent, continue like I'm doing. And in some players there's great players and some players get injured. Other guys get an opportunity. And some guys were playing for the Springboks and someone else got an opportunity and he went on playing 120 games. And so one guy played 5 games. So I was fortunate to play 17 times for South Africa. And at the same time, it was one of the most disappointing things in my life when I wasn't picked again. And as a human being, I had to get over that as well. So that was also a challenge, apart from the pressure of playing and representing your country, doing everything you desired for. And then on top of that, because I was playing for the Springboks, I got the opportunity to go play in France and help Racing 92, which next year will be 10 years, winning in Camp Nou in one of the biggest club rugby games in 2016 ever to be played. If I didn't play for the Springboks, probably to some extent I wouldn't have got that opportunity. And then I was blessed to go from the Springboks to France. And after a couple of months, the Springboks stopped picking me, and the journey went on. And I went and played for Toulon. So being in a position to play for the Bulls, Northampton Saints, Racing, Scarlets, also I had a stint then in the World Cup, Springboks, Toulon, and growing up in a rugby town and grade school, I could not ask for more at the age of 40. And through that life journey where I could have made a difference and an impact. And it was, if I look back at that, because sometimes, you find yourself in situations or whatever, you just need to remind yourself, where do you come from? And what have you gone through? And then that smile on your face. It's been a massive blessing.
So describe the first time you run out on the pitch as a Springbok. Like, is the feeling what you expected? Was it more than you expected? Very different? Were you nervous? Were you excited? Like, what was the compared to normal?
I wish I could have it again. It was like split seconds. So I will always believe that, it was to some extent like anxious, nerve-wracking, stressed. It's good to have a little bit of nerves and all those actions, but anxiety and stress, and that's another nice tool for people, it's if you're unprepared. If you're psychologically prepared, you've done your homework, you've you put your goals in place, you've trained hard, you've done your analyzing, then you can remind yourself psychologically, I've done what I had to do to prepare. Is that statement about if you fail to plan, you plan to fail, and that brings anxiety and stress. So obviously, if you pull that jersey, you don't own that jersey. You just represent that jersey because there's someone that represents that jersey before you, and that will represent that jersey for years to come in the future. And it's almost like it's a borrowed time to you, and you need to give it your best shot when you put it over, and you've got millions of people looking at you. But we're all different the way we look at it and we think about it. But obviously, I was stressed a little bit, and the adrenaline and all those things. But it went past emotional. You can think my parents, family standing in the stadium, being emotional, singing the anthem, winning the game, which is always nice. Not everyone always gets a chance to win their first test match. And we went on, we had a great journey. We only lost against the All Blacks and controversial things. I played in that time also with the red cards and the big tackle on Dan Carter and the French referee and, the apology statements from RB Rugby on the calls. And so I can, look back and smile that it was a incredible run out in that game against England.
That's amazing. I mean, I think I have a little bit of experience with this myself, but not to your extent, I'm sure. But how did you see like friends, probably friends within the family, like change, even people you knew from school, all of a sudden you representing the national team, you become somewhat of a celebrity in the country, right, at that point? Or you're already pretty well known anyway.
So because of my family, my mom was in property in the Cape Town area, and my father being a leader in ophthalmology. So for my family and having the surname Kruger, people sometimes think obviously something connected with the Kruger National Park. And then you've got the Krugerrand. So the surname and the Germans and the this and the that connections to some extent. But the my family has been always well connected. And by putting me into a school like Paul Roos and getting a Donny Craven bursary, playing at Marches Rugby, you build up a large network. But through studying and the love I have for business and making an impact where I go, I've always had the personality and character to ask questions and be a student of life because your path crosses with so many people. And I'm talking from, not judging whatever the person's position is, where, be kind with the people on the way up. You might meet them, you might need them on the way down.
Sure.
And that the relationship and the people I've met through my life, I've tried to really always keep contact with all these different people through life. And by playing sports, the doors just, open widely open. And you get to meet some of the presidents and CEOs of some of the largest companies in the world because some of them become your team sponsors and their names stand on the front of the jersey, from Samsung to Clarence to all different businesses, banking and so on. And then you to some extent it opens up doors and you become friends with those people. And I was always intrigued in asking questions, and that's another words of encouragement for upcoming sports people to make use of that opportunity, because sometimes in the old days and the old school coaches, it's like rugby, 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 soccer, soccer, soccer. But who pays the salary? It's the sponsors that pay the salary. It's a ticket holder that pays the salary. If you don't respect those people and you don't give back to those people on corporate events, or go do a public speaking, or if go shake someone's hand after the game who's one of the main sponsors, but that's also an opportunity to get to know that person. I'm not saying being friends with everyone, but to ask someone, how did you take Samsung from this company valuation to that company? It's a not everyone gets the opportunity to ask a president or CEO from a different company, how did you, and what was his journey in doing it, and what was the company's journey? So I've always been fascinated in that aspect as well. So yes, now back in South Africa, I have a great network of people, and we are involved with my father in the eye laser clinic group, which it sees thousands of patients. People fly all over the world to come and see him and his clinic and his incredible staff. And so that helps where I am now connected with different brands and sponsors and businesses, and especially with the Eye Laser Clinic and the Gift of Sight Trust Foundation, to bring this. And I've now come from the sporting background, meeting all these people, now bringing this network together a for a great cause and a purpose. As I say, as you mentioned earlier, on connecting these dots, with the background and going forward is quite cool.
So you've started to talk about working with your father. Of course, I mentioned earlier that I had the pleasure of meeting him and also interviewing him for this podcast a few weeks back. Um, let's talk about what it's like working with your father. So I also have and somewhat work with my father. So I'm just interested to know what that dynamic looks like.
So some people or some families, they they work well together and some struggle. And with or without family, you'll have challenges, and it's how you deal with those challenges and what's put in front of you. So I grew up, as we spoke about, and I always knew my father was a doctor, but and an eye doctor, but I didn't understand actually what they were doing. To some extent, I didn't even know it was a cataract. And and when I came to the end of my journey in sport and the privilege I've had of my family supporting me all the way, sport was good to me that I was in a position where I could make a decision. And because I studied and looked after my financial structures while I was playing, I was in a position to make a decision what I would like to do. And and when you come to the end of your journey in sports, sometimes some teams that's maybe not in the top six or top 10. And where I was fortunate to play in some of the top six teams in the world, I had to make a decision. Do I go and help some of the lower ranked teams to try and get in there or not? Or is this now my time to get involved in the business world? And that's when my father came to me and asked me, come and join me in the business. And I think because I think my father could see that, rugby, I had a great journey in rugby. 17 years, 350 first class games, many injuries. Fortunately, traveled the world, lived in great places, south of France, Paris, England, Cape Town, South Africa, Wales. Traveled the world with the teams. I think my father could see that, I wanted a different challenge. And not knowing what that challenge should or must be, he said, come and be the CEO of the Islands Clinic. And I said, let's give it a shot, not knowing what it would, hold in for the future. And looking now back 5 years later, it's been an incredible journey. I've a week just before I started it, I met a lady which he helped because he started a foundation called the Gift of Sight Trust, which he helps less fortunate people to regain surgery who does not have finances. So if you go look at statistics in South Africa, 8.5 out of 10 people in South Africa, and Africa has bigger challenges even, do not have access to private healthcare. So there's opportunity. You either see it as a mess and a collapsing system, or you see it as opportunity. And he made a decision to help people, and he put a lot of effort and time into it with another lady. And unfortunately, family passed away in a vehicle accident. And I'm a man of my word. I said before I met her, I said a week before I met her, I said I'll see where I'm finished now with the rugby. I've I'll make it. I'll see where I can help. And unfortunately, they passed away, I felt that to some extent that pressure on me. I said I'm going to help. There's this foundation. They doctors. They're busy. The country's in difficult circumstances. There's a challenge, and I took it on and I helped to grow that. It's 5 years later. It's grown into one of the most exciting and best golfing events in South Africa with television involved, great brand sponsors, FoodJoy, Titleist, and Rudy Projects, international brands that's taken part, Zoho, Sunbet, many different great MDs, presidents, former sports people coming together, connecting for a great cause. And going back to the business aspect, is to I'm in a position to try and help where I get the public sector and the private sector and the non-profit organizations and business all together taking hands to make a sustainable difference. It's impossible to make it. It's I wouldn't say it's impossible. It's very difficult to make an impact on your own. But if
Yep.
you take like-minded people and you can find synergy to make an impact and have impact, it just becomes so much easier, and the rippling effect becomes so much larger. So working together, yes, you've got heated discussions, but if you can have respectful discussions, and you'll always have differences and so on, but it's there's nice synergy because he's the doctor. Yes, he's got some business mind also too, because he built up his own hospital. It was one of his dreams to be a ophthalmologist specialist, but also own his own hospital. And for me, joining in there, learning more about the medical industry and what that has to offer and the difference it makes in humanity, and now bringing the business aspect to it, but also the aspect, because it's not only about the business side to it, but it's the impact you make and the dignity you restore in people's lives, and with your senses, your vision, your sight. It's a tough industry for people and families that struggle, and with the amount of ophthalmologists also in South Africa, 225 around 225 active ophthalmologists for 63 million people. You can think the amount of people that need to get into a doctor and see and access the facility. So it's a great opportunity. I enjoy working with my family and making a difference and educating people about their vision.
Yeah, I think it's amazing when I was speaking to your father that there can't be many more rewarding professions, occupations, industries to be in than medical, and particularly sight. I mean, yesterday, as a example, I was at the Manchester United football game, and I was sat next to somebody who.
Thanks for the invite.
You're welcome. Anytime you come through, you're welcome. Um, and the person that was sat next to me with his father, his father was completely blind and was listening to the game on a commentary headset. And I was like, it just makes you think. You're like, wow, that's just not the one, probably the main sense that when you don't have it has the biggest impact. The other ones, hearing, obviously they're all, you want to have all of them in the best way possible. But I would suspect, just as a guess, that sight is probably has the biggest impact when you don't have it. I just thought about it now. It kind of triggered that. And I remember speaking to your father, and I said, "God knows how many surgeries he's been involved with, and how many people's lives he's restored. Like it's an amazing ability to have and the level that he operates at, clearly."
Yes. Yes, and growing up having because it's also, if you go back at sports, some parents are, really over involved, some parents aren't involved, and my parents were always involved and supportive during my journey. And I always say, rather a parent that's over involved than a parent that's not involved in a child's upbringing and life. And now being able to support my family back and my father, because sometimes he would jump on a plane a Friday night after seeing a couple of hundred patients, during that week, and or 50 or 60 or 70 patients on that specific day at night, or coming out of a theatre list from 8 o'clock till 6 o'clock, jumping on a plane, flying over, coming to watch a test match or a club rugby game or whatever, watch the game, fly back on a Sunday night, arrive back the Monday morning, 10, 14, 15, 20-hour flight, whatever, back into office for 17 years. He supported me, and now being back into business, now having the opportunity to support him and seeing and understanding actually what he has done, his legacy in the last 30 years of ophthalmology. He's been an ophthalmologist since 1993. He's got his own two dedicated hospitals. He's got a phenomenal team of over 30 medical people working together, professors, doctors, surgeons, clinical teams. Seeing how his team has grown, the different types of people that's been helped, people coming in there blind, wheelchairs. He got a Medici Award the other day for humanitarian award, which is international global award for making a difference, and the recognition around that. So understanding you sitting in that stadium with these people next to you, blind, listening, the senses aspect for him, feeling and listening, not being able to. So I've became completely obsessed and passionate and emotional about sight and the impact sight has in this world and can have. And it's, incredible journey.
How now you're in the business world, you have alluded to it, but your mentality, what parts of your mentality that you've learned from rugby? You talked about the subconscious. You're clearly very studious guy. Clearly, you say you studied life. You can definitely tell that with the way you come across. What have you brought to the business mentality wise, perhaps from your sporting days? Like, what have you kind of, what have you brought in?
So there was another cool thing I did, which is also a very practical thing because sometimes things and people can make it very complex. And if you go Google it, the Wheel of Life, have you heard of it?
Maybe, and I'm not sure if it's the
Okay.
same term, but carry on.
So you can go type in on Google the Wheel of Life, business, sport, all different, industries. You can it's relevant. It's for a child, for or elderly, whatever, and it's so practical that you draw a circle. You can pull it off from Google. The circle's already there, and it can be broken up into finances, support, psychological, physical, whatever the industry and stuff. So by looking at that, and it's difficult to explain it now, just because if you have the picture in front of you, the middle point of the circle, and now you cut it into like a pizza, the middle point is zero. Now 0 to 10 to the outside of the circle. Now you're connecting those dots within the wheel of life. Okay, my support system, I have a difficult relationship with my coach or my family or whatever. It's at a 2. Okay, physically, I am at a 7 out of 10. I'm training hard. Psychologically, I'm struggling. I'm at a 4. Financial, whatever the thing. Now you're connecting the dots within the circle. You're seeing actually, as a human being, psychologically, okay, this is where I am at. I'm at an average 55%, as
Mhm.
example. What can and should I do to get myself? We're not going to be a 10 out of 10. I just, some of us, we do dream, like almost like Tiger Woods in the Masters, chipping that chip, those pictures and those visions. It's very difficult to be a 10 out of 10. So, but by addressing these different aspects and just analyzing yourself, it takes minutes because we see more and more people become lazy on goals. And if you go look at the statistics and how many people actually out there is put, less than 3% actually put out goals there and achieve goals out of the amount of people in the world. So, and it's such a practical, nice thing to share and the impact and the difference it can have in people's lives. Go analyze yourself on the wheel of life in sport or business, and then go put together those goals on how and what you want to achieve it, and apply the conscious and the subconscious mindset on meditation and analyzing and visualization. And by bringing that from sport into the business world as well, I've shared that with at the BMW Awards and with the Al Clinic team and some other businesses and people, and it's a nice practical thing. Which I am privileged to have learned from John McGrath through my life, and it's something you can continuously do and analyze yourself and your different um, um, business or sport or aspects in life you find yourself, and it's a nice practical thing to share.
You have talked a little bit, quite a bit about goals. I'm interested. I have my own view on goals somewhat, and I've trialed this for this last portion of the year from I think September through to December, just setting three uh, one's a health, like a weight related goal, and then two are financial but slightly different aspects. Previously, I had the opinion of goal setting is great, but the challenge can often be that the high of achieving the goal is so fleeting, and you achieve the goal and then it's like on to the next, and your life then becomes a series of just living in the future, almost like trying to achieve something. Okay, achieved it. Next thing, next thing, next thing. How do you? Because clearly sometimes you fall below that goal, sometimes you reach the goal. How do you make sure personally yourself that when you've reached the goal that you're celebrating, and you're also present in the process of getting to the goal, at the same time if you fall short of it, that you're not crushed and it's not, detrimental.
Yes. So I always tell my kids, no losing, only learning. So as long as you've got that learning mindset to it, because you learn more from losing than winning.
True.
And I hated it to lose. I hated it to, walk off that field and shake someone's hand and losing. I hated it, that feeling. When we lost the game, to have a beer afterwards in the locker, I couldn't. I didn't feel like I deserved that beer. And so we're all different. We've got competitive mindsets. Some people are more competitive, some people are more relaxed. And but on those goals, it's obviously about setting realistic goals, and 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 how and what as long as you put the things in place on how and what if you give it your best shot, that's the biggest aspect. Give it your best shot, and if you know you've given your best shot at it and you did not achieve it, it's okay. But if you put goals out there and you did not give it your best shot, and it's about that, the pain of discipline or the pain of regret, that aspect. So if you if and continuously you grow and you hit that target. um I mean, if I look back 5 years ago, when I sat with my father and said, this is the idea regarding his business, the eye laser clinic, and where and what, it's sometimes, and even in 2012, 2011, the year just before I started playing for the Springboks, I've overachieved all my goals, by just doing the wheel of life and understanding my conscious and subconscious mind. I overachieved it. So sometimes you put goals out there and say, but I want for my business double digit fit, or I want single digit, between 5 and 10% growth. And now you're hitting a 20, 25, 30 thing. Don't be surprised, because sometimes by just that rippling effect and that synergy and stuff can just, um, we've seen in this world what's happened with all the different, markets and cryptos and digital and social media and podcasts and, all these different aspects. And if you really go put some time out there, quiet time, and analyzing and putting it all together, and on what and how you want to achieve it, don't be surprised. But the most important, if you don't achieve it, is to look at it as a learning aspect and don't be negative about it. It's obviously not nice to lose, and learning is not always so nice as well. But it's the way you think about it and the way you look at it.
On that note, in your professional sports career, I suppose, but also business career, what failures particularly stung, and what did you learn from them? Is it injuries? Was it just bad losses? Was it not being picked?
So injuries is obviously in sport some of the toughest stuff, because you don't know how the operation's going to go. You don't know how the recovery is going to go, and you don't know if you're going to get picked again. And because you're signing a 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, in sports, it's very seldom you're signing a 5 or 10 year, or you get a permanent employment. Remember, as professional sports people, you sign a contract for a period, and now you get an injury, and it depends on how did you perform before that. Now someone else gets the opportunity. Now he's doing better than what you did. It's a very unsure industry, the sporting. So I can think a lot of sports people do have, anxiety and a lot of pressure and stress, which the supporter, he doesn't think about that. The supporter only thinks about, and the sponsor, I want my team to win. But in sport, there's tremendous amount of pressure on professional sports people. And if you go look even at golfing, how many people actually do make it? Now you go and look at JJ Spawn that won the PGA. I mean, that guy he had one of the worst nights of his life. His daughter was sick in hospital. He was just, hanging in there, and he comes out and he wins the PGA. And, and different sports. So the stuff that stung me hard was obviously when I had injuries, and I had plenty and coming back, but still to have a 17-year career playing 350 games. And sometimes some of these sports players, they keep quiet, they have struggles or they have injuries, but they continue with it because they're not sure if they're going to get another contract, if they're going to get an operation, or if they talk about it, or whatever the situation is. So that was always a challenge. But then for me, one of the toughest things was playing 17 test matches consecutively for the Springboks, and getting a text message to say, that I'm not going to be selected again. And that was like a dream I had, and I worked so hard at it, and when I was in the team environment, I even worked extra hard every minute or second, whatever I could, put into it and give to it and appreciate and respect the jersey and representing my country. And then, and that's, coaches, that's something I could not control. I could only control how do I work? How do I react? What do I give towards the team? And then it's the coach's decision. So it's about controlling the controllables. What could I and can I control? And you'll have disappointments and not be happy, and coaches might choose you, or you might lose tenders in business, or business things might not go your way. But control the controllables, what you can control. How hard do you work? What do you put into it? And I believe in karma. If you do that, if you do what you need to do, the goodness will come back to you. The wheel will turn, and this door might, close. Two doors will open for you.
I presume, given your sports background, you're a competitive person, right?
Yes. You want to see growth, you want to win, you want to have goals out there, you want to smash the goals. And even on my phone, I've got like over 500 motivational talks and clips and quotes. And so I'm fascinated about the mind, on positivity. There's a million different ways you can say something and look at it. And I would always choose the most positive way of trying to say something and look at it. And um, how can I say it in a ways? Because sometimes people, they say stuff they don't mean, and they don't put it in the right way forward. But it could have been put over into a much more positive way. It could rather have been said, "This is a nice challenge to achieve," than saying that it's impossible, or it's an obstacle, or those type of aspects. So I'm fascinated about positivity and the communication around that.
Are there any books or particular videos, podcasts that you watch or read that you recommend?
So I've looked at books, and I'll share about something very special actually. And I'm a reader. I'm a lazy reader. I'm a more blink list. Here's the book, because I want to get to the point. I want to do it. I'm a doer. I'm not a talker. And what must I do to get there? And I'm not always saying, that, some people get very quickly to the top, and some take long. But sometimes it's good to also be, composed and patient in the journey, and not, go too quickly, because sometimes you can mess things up by making too quick. This is a very balanced aspect. But uh, a person with the name Leon Lawrence, you've probably heard of a Steinhoff thing, which was quite big it was in Germany. It was a global listed company in South Africa, and things didn't work out for that company. And the guy that had to come and sort it was one of the biggest financial problems in one of the companies in this country. And he was one of the CEOs or high position people to sort that company out. And he read a book called I must just get the name of the book. I'm going to tell you now what is the book's name. It's now tough for me forgetting the name of the book, but the concept of the book came out. The main objective of the book was the love for people. And yeah, for someone like him that was responsible for one of the largest companies in this country, and to sort out the problems with that company and the losses a lot of people and financial families and financial people, had. You can just think to come and knock at my door, and because coming back to the thing, I would always connect and ask people questions. What was important? How did you do that? How did you, put smiles back on people's faces 5 years off, after this big crash, or a difficult circumstance? And he said, but I read this book, and this book helped me. And with his notes, he came and knocked at my door. He brought me the book. Now, for a busy guy like that to come to me and give me that book, to be able to read it and then share it and pass it on, is was quite special. So I've read a couple of books. I've looked at a lot of quotes. But as the world and the digital aspects now change, uh, people engage with photos and content and video so much better. And we're, talking about 20, 30 years ago, people reading newspapers and books more. Now we're seeing more, podcasts and audibles and videos. So I do like scrolling, but so they make this joke, go look at a guy's Instagram feed and then you'll know who or what. But
Yep.
my stuff's quite on positivity and where I can learn and say those different positive aspects and so on. And then obviously the odd book and so on. But I don't want to sit for 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 10 hours or 2 weeks and read a book. I'll rather try and look at the summary of the book or the digital aspect.
That makes sense. I think a nice place to leave it, given the conversation that we've had, would be what are the goals going forwards? I presume there are some of them are business related, some of them are the Gift of Sight Foundation. Got that correct? Yeah. What does that look like the next kind of couple of years for you guys?
Really. I've got a big passion for the gift of sight and the legacy. I've already started through that, and I'd like to take that to the next level. And the next level for that is taking it global and expanding it. And you can only do that by having the right partners and the people with the right hearts and synergy around that, because there is large businesses out there in CSI, corporate social investment, corporate social responsibility, donations, and this and that, and NPOs and organizations, non-profits, and so on. So there is money out there, and to help and make a difference in these people's lives, the reality it comes at a major cost. Medical costs are high. We've seen it globally everywhere. Everyone's complaining, healthcare and so on. So these funds and it's tax deductible for businesses and companies. So it's about opening the right doors and connecting with the right people that say, but this is the organization. I want my business to support this organization. And anyway, it's a tax benefit for that business, rather than just paying taxes and where and what possible for taxes to be best allocated, the deductions of that. So I'd like to grow that. I'd like not to have a waiting list. For example, in South Africa, you're probably going to have to raise over 200 million rand, which is about, just to solve blindness, which is a lot of money, but it's not impossible. And globally, if we see, 43 million people globally are blind, and there's people that don't have to be blind. And if they diagnosed at an early stage with whatever the disease or glaucoma or cataracts or this or that, the surgery and the treatments become so much easier for the surgeons. I'm not talking about only South Africa, but globally, there's many different countries. I've sat with people in India and in Africa. There's many different places in the world to have an impact and help. So I'd like to take the gifts design to the next level. And then on the eye laser clinic group, we've got two hospitals in South Africa, eye hospitals, and it's always nice to have the right partners and people joined in, surgeons, doctors, specialists, professors, companies to help grow, make a difference in improve. You can always improve your customer service, patient experience through the journey, but the most possible is obviously the patient outcome, getting the guy out of his glasses, out of his contact lenses, and creating that vision comfort and getting that guy's vision back, and because that impact you have on that guy's life, and or where someone's vision impaired, he needs to have a helper. People don't always think about that now. Someone's blind, he's got cataracts, he's on a waiting list in whatever country or government institution, 3 to 5 years. Now he needs to have a caretaker. You've got two people out of work. Now you're helping a person, you're putting him back into employment, you're actually putting two people back into employment, you're helping that family, restoring dignity and stuff. So the synergy and the combination there with the gift of sight trust and the eye laser clinic making a difference together. And then for me, on a personal level, to be able to share my story and give, up and coming sports people or business people some words of encouragement, because we all have a story, and we all have challenges and go through tough things. But sometimes, there's that Kaizen mindset as well. You've probably heard about that continuous improvement.
Mhm.
And it's a very cool statement and a thing to think about on how can you continuously improve. And if you can improve 1% a day, it's 365% a year. It's not impossible. It's not difficult Go understand your conscious and your subconscious mind. Go look at the wheel of life. Put your goals out there. So for myself, on a personal level, where I can help make a difference, words of encouragement, schools, sports teams, coaches, businesses, and brands and events and so on. I'd love to make a difference where I can, and continue living a blessed life and enjoying life with my family, and making a difference in the business world as well.
Well, it's been a really interesting interview, as I knew it would be. Really thank you for your time this evening. It's quite late for you, I know. So yeah, thanks for finding the time. I really appreciate it.
I really appreciate speaking with you and asking me to share my journey, and I hope it will have a substantial impact to the people listening. And I look forward to sharing it. And you have a blessed life as well in the UK and Manchester, and with business and everything. And I look forward to meeting you in person as well.
Yeah, I might have to come to that golf day.
Yes, I think that would be great, and bring
Uh,
some people from the UK with.
why not? Thank you so much.
Right. Thanks, Charles. Appreciate it.